wire rope, which he had intended to use just after shooting down into the lobby, to climb down and escape. And he was sentenced, unfortunately, to 7 years and did 3.5 years. And he wasn't a career criminal or anything. He had one minor arrest. So eventually that law passed, and it passed in Congress, and the Democratic Congress let it expire recently, so you should be happy. He won.
Yes, excuse me.
I've been asked to make, if you're going to talk, please be very quiet, or it would help the rest of us here.
Hi there. I just got pushed out of the way. I grew up in the 44th precinct, and we had beat cops, and I loved our beat cops.
4-4, did you say?
4-4 in the Bronx, yeah.
Yes.
And they knew who were the good kids and who were the real troublemakers. So it's kind of nice to have neighborhood cops. I also have had the privilege, during your being police chief in San Jose, of having indirectly worked with Mike Roberts. And I believe you were the one responsible for bringing Mike Roberts into San Jose. Is that a correct statement?
For bringing one?
Mike Roberts, your police psychologist?
Mike Roberts? Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, and I just want to say...
No, he was there, but I worked with him.
Yeah, he did the evaluations and set the standards for police coming into the San Jose Police Department during those years. And occasionally, because I did psychological evaluations, occasionally somebody would come to me and say, well, you know, they didn't accept me in San Jose, but I think they made a mistake, and I would do a second opinion. Never did I disagree with him, and I'm pretty opinionated, but never did I disagree with him. But I have a question for you regarding the non-use of a citizen review board. The San Jose Police Department, and the reason I said the Mike Roberts story, is a very professional police department. Santa Clara Police Department is a very professional police department, as are many of them in our county. But there are police departments, I lived in LA for a while, there are police departments that are notorious for discriminating, let's put it that way, and for doing some really onerous kinds of things. So if we don't have citizen review boards, and if we have, but we have to have some way, obviously, for accountability that will satisfy the citizens as well as satisfy internally in the police department and city council. So what would you recommend?
Well, you have an independent citizen, the district attorney, who's elected. You have the grand jury, independent citizens. You have the city manager. You have an ombudsman in San Jose. And you already have the structure there. The trouble is, the only verdict that satisfies certain people is that the officer is found guilty. And that's what bothered the San Jose, the San Jose Mercury, that the people weren't being found guilty. The officers were not being found guilty. Now, they make, there are 1 million people probably living in San Jose. Police department makes 38,000 arrests a year. The fact that they only have 117 complaints of unnecessary force is absolutely incredible. And so the Mercury News reaches a conclusion that that's because people have no trust in making complaints. Well, I came to San Jose in the first week. I met with a group of Latino lawyers and a community organizer who not the one who became president. They wanted a citizen review board, and they told me that there's no trust in the process, and it's in police headquarters where there understandably are uniformed cops with firearms at the desk, and people are afraid, and many of them are Latino and so on. And I didn't really believe what they were saying, But I listened to them, and they also then gave me a list of names of officers and said, we want you to remove these officers from patrol because they've had a lot of complaints. Well, I hadn't spent 3 years at Harvard Law School for nothing. And I said, gentlemen, I'm really surprised that someone in your profession would ask me to violate due process and the rights of police officers. How are we going to get them to respect the rights of the people in the street if we don't respect their rights? And I can't transfer people on the basis of past complaints that weren't substantiated. And I said, how about giving me a year to straighten out the Internal Affairs Unit and the process, and how about if we move Internal Affairs out of headquarters into a private office building, and we have a Spanish-speaking Latino greet people as they come in, and the police officers will be in plain clothes and will not display their weapons. They were flabbergasted. And what they hadn't told me is that they had scheduled, after my meeting with them, a press conference at City Hall where they were going to demand that I be fired. This was in my first week. I said, look, I'm not totally blind on citizen review boards. If I lived in some cities, I'd vote for one myself. But give me a year and come back and we'll talk about it. And they went over and held their press conference and they said, we think he's crazy. He won't last 6 months, but we're going to give him a chance. Well, the fact is that we did what we promised. We opened it in IA in a building across the street, had a Spanish-speaking person from the community hired, and the complaints went down, not up. And a couple of the people I worked with very closely in NACP and the Latino community told me privately, we don't think we need a citizen review board. We can't say that publicly, but you've cleaned up the act. And it wasn't me, it was the police conduct is shaped by the officer's value system, not by orders that the chief signs and sends out threatening discipline. And it's the same with preventing crime. People don't commit crime because, in fact, if you want to see an excellent article, Heather McDonald is a law professor who wrote an article today in the Wall Street Journal contradicting this idea of various academics that poverty and discrimination causes crime. She does an excellent article showing how that doesn't hold up. Crime is not prevented because people are scared of cops, and in fact, the department's own survey shows an 85 to 90% approval of the police, and even in minority communities, an extremely high approval. Mercury News doesn't publish any of those, and those people don't have any voice. In fact, many of them are afraid to speak up. But guess what? They're not afraid of the police. They're afraid of the criminals and the gangs and people that will retaliate against them. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, Richard, how many more questions?
Well, if you could make it quick, we can take the three that are standing there, but kind of running out.
Okay, quick questions.
Chief McNamara, in light of the most recent terrorist attempt, and the fact that the administration seems to frown on profiling, as a devotee of criminal minds, profiling seems to be the answer. What is your position on profiling?
The legal position on racial profiling is pretty plain from the courts. It's illegal. But I would say this, profiling is something that is routine and necessary in security and in policing. and